Hey everybody, Robert Tonner here. Whoops, a little too loud. Robert Tonner here. Sorry about this get up. My webcam is out of commission, so I kind of like cobbled this thing together. So we'll see how this goes. Gaming headset, whatever. Thank you for being here. And first of all, I want to thank Rachel Hoffman for the virtual doll convention. Unbelievable thing that she's pulled together in like no time. It's kind of the stuff we need right now. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you can sit back and take your mind off the stuff for a little bit and watch this and enjoy the virtual doll convention. So anyway, I'm gonna take you through the evolution of the modern doll with materials, most importantly sculptors, and different designs that help change the direction where dolls were going. It's a program I've done for UFTC. I've done a couple other places, and you may or may not have seen it. So I hope you enjoy it. So here we go. Alrighty, let me get this into, whoops. There we go. And I'm gonna do this. Okay. Anyway, all right, so here we go. Evolution, whoops, let's get this started. Okay, evolution of the modern doll, the game changers, the sculptures, and the material. I think for the past century and a half, I think the most influential doll sculptor, hands down, was this guy, Bernard Lippert, who, if you ask me, looks a little bit like Fred Mertz. However, he was an incredibly talented German sculptor. He came over after World War I, in and around World War I, when America was dying for doll sculptors because or doll designers. Uh, the war had cut off all, the European dolls being brought over here for the kids. So American manufacturers started to come into their own during that period, and Bernard Lippert was a very big part of that. Although he did many dolls before this. One of his earliest and biggest hits was Patsy. Patsy was started for F&B Doll Company in the late 20s, and she continued to be very popular through the 30s, through the Depression and all that. As you can tell, she's very cute, very stylized, and just an adorable little doll. And everybody had her. She came in a million different sizes, from 9 inches to, I believe there was a 32, or Patsy May 36-inch doll. This is Patsy Ann. Patsy Ann was very, very popular, 19 inches tall. This is a beautiful, beautiful mint Patsy Ann. He also did Patsy Baby, so there was a whole big Patsy family. But he didn't just do Patsy. That was one of his starts. And he was a work for hire sculptor. So yeah, he would work for different companies. Ideal hired him to do the Shirley Temple doll. And this is Shirley with her little matching Shirley Temple doll. Shirley Temple was a tremendous hit. And then as we get into the later 30s and whatever, he's still sculpting, and he was asked by Ideal to do, I mean, Shirley Temple did so well, they started doing more celebrity portraits. This is Deanna Durbin. He also did Judy Garland as Dorothy, and Judy Garland as a teen doll. He did many generic sort of faces, like this sweet little face. This was a McGuffiana or whatever doll for Madame Alexander, late 40s. Mid-40s, he did these kind of wonderful, highly stylized fashion dolls for Alexander. And again, the bodies were not sculpted as an adult. They were on a regular child body, padded regular child body, but the faces were amazing. Very, very popular doll. F&B's Anne Shirley. And here she is in all her glory. He did all the babies too. The Baby, incredibly popular. That's another F&B doll. They reissued Patsy in the 40s, same sculpt, of course. Margaret O'Brien doll from Madame Alexander. This was a beautiful, beautiful doll. Not a great example in this picture, but she was a stunning doll. Excuse me. Sorry if you heard me slurping there. Here's a Vogue Toodles. He did this whole 8-inch thing that was happening in the late 40s and into the 50s. These dolls were very, very popular, usually around 8 inches, between 8 and 9 inches. Toodles, which was the forerunner of Ginny, and Ginny was for those baby boomer kids hugely popular. Another Vogue Ginny. This is yeah, Vogue Ginny. No need to say anything else. Madame Alexander Wendy's, again, the high price version of this little 8-inch toddler doll. He did a lot of work for American Character. Here's a Sweet Sue. She was produced in the early 50s. And this is one of my favorite faces. I don't know why, but I just love this face. And I collect these dolls. 24-inch Sweet Sue. He also did, now when a toy company had a popular doll, what they would do is they would make it in multiple sizes. This is the 30-inch Sweet Sue. Again, for Madame Alexander, the Maggie face. Beautiful, beautiful cartoon face. She always reminded me of Disney's Alice. And this doll, I'll talk a little bit more about her later as a game changer, but he sculpted Cissy, and she may not have been the most popular doll at the time, but she was definitely the most revolutionary. Tiny Tears, again by Lipford, looks very much like the Patsy Baby, and this is a late 50 doll. She has a vinyl body. Tiny Tears, late 50s, hard plastic head, vinyl body. Now he had done, Bernard Lipford had done so well with Shirley Temple in the 30s that Ideal hired him back to do the vinyl Shirley Temple in the late 50s. When Shirley Temple is now an adult, she had a show called Shirley Temple's Fairy Tale Theater, I believe it was called, where they showed, where they did, takes on fairy tales. So Ideal reproduced the doll, and again, extremely popular. This doll sold for many years, from the late 50s through the early 60s. He also did Tammy. So Barbie had happened at this time. It had already been happening, and Ideal was kind of slow on the uptake to come up with their competition for Barbie. But when they did, they came out with Tammy, who was very, very sweet, but she was definitely of another time compared to Barbie. Pumpkin, sculpted for F&B, and this is something that I just realized. I didn't know he did Pumpkin, because to me it's a different face for him, but he did Pumpkin for F&B. And one of his last, I don't think it's his last, but one of his last dolls done in the mid-60s, Pebbles and Bam Bam. Now, this guy too, Neil Easton, he kind of, to me, he ushered in the modern doll look. And let me tell you how he did that. So early 60s or late 50s, Ideal is looking for a sculptor to do this new life-size doll that they want to come out with. They could do a life-size doll because of the advances in mold making. They could do blow molded bodies, which would be very light. So you could have a very big doll, but that would be very light, so a child could play with it. So they first approached um, Bernard, and they didn't really like what he did. So the next guy they approached was Neil Easton. Now, Neil was definitely a doll sculptor, but he was also a very renowned fine artist, and he did these monument sort of sculpts. This is a clay of a monument that he did for Washington. It's the Roosevelt Monument, and there it is in bronze in Washington. He did the sculpt of Mayor LaGuardia. And to me, this is one of like the most amazing dolls of the time. A life-size little girl doll, Patty PlayPal. Uh, she was almost like a beautiful little face. She was almost like a little mannequin. You know, she could wear the kids' clothes, a 3-year-old's clothes. A beautiful example of a mint patty. Now, this is an interesting doll. This is F&B's Mary Jane. She came out to compete with Patty PlayPal, but she was sculpted by Bernard Lifford. So although he didn't sculpt the Patty PlayPal, he did do bigger dolls. She has a sweet face, and F&B did some great clothes for her, but the body's a little, you know, not as good as Eastern's body, but a very interesting doll. And finding her in mint shape, she's really beautiful. Neil also did Susie PlayPal, which was Patty's little sister. And at the time, Ideal started doing, I mean, Mattel was focused on Barbie at this time, early 60s. Ideal was focused on these big dolls. So this is Daddy's Girl, who was 42 inches tall, big doll. And these dolls are beautiful if you can ever find them, especially in this sort of shape. He also did a portrait of, and this is Ideal again, he did a portrait of Shirley Temple, a beautiful likeness on the Patty PlayPal body. He did Miss Ideal. I love this doll, and I think that this doll with that little face and all that, I think that she's been overlooked in the collector world. He did Saucy Walker. And this is interesting too. Now, I could almost guarantee that he did the body, and I'm at 99% sure that he did the head for this. It's a Jackie doll by Ideal. Barbie had already been out for a couple of years, and they thought they'd come out with their version of a fashion doll, and it was Jackie. She was 16 inches tall, sculpted by Neil. He did Tubsy. This was, I believe, mid 60s. And Giggles, another one of my favorite dolls. He could get an expression on a doll like nobody else. She is another photo of Giggles. Then late 60s, early 70s, we're going into Cissy. And Cissy was, you know, another huge hit for Ideal, sculpted by Neil Easton. I always love this little face. This is Cinnamon. And she had an adorable little body. These dolls are just, the sculpts are just works of art. And growing hair, baby Cissy. Now, this is interesting too, because, you know, although his most famous work, Neil's most famous work was done for Ideal, he also worked for other companies. And here's work he did for EG. This is Pupatrina. And he did this fashion doll. I apologize for the picture, but he did this set of fashion dolls. You can find these pretty easily. I just, you know, had the quality of the production been good, I just wonder how, you know, how nice these could have been. And I didn't know this. I found this out recently, that he sculpted Half Pint for F&B. Excuse me. It's all that talking. Bill Lilly, while this was going on in the United States, there was something very important happening in Germany in the mid-50s. And Max Weisbrot, I don't know how to say it, sculpted Bild Lilly for Bild newspaper in Germany. And she was kind of a naughty doll. She was supposed to be kind of you know, like a little sexualized thing. And she was actually sold in cigar shops in Germany rather than in toy stores for kids. And then, of course, Lily inspired Barbie. Ruth Handler went to Germany. You probably all know the story. Very, very popular doll in the late 50s, early 60s was Betsy McCall, an 8-inch little doll. She was different than the earlier dolls, and she was not a Bernard Lifford sculpt. So she had a more of a little girl's thin body and not one of the pudgy little toddler bodies. So she was very unique for the time. So, and very, very popular. So here's an incredible store display. Betsy, 4 American character, were all sculpted by this guy. I don't know how to say that, but it's this guy. He had a really wonderful way of doing a stylized kind of fantasy head, very sweet faces. Another Betsy version of Betsy, flirty eyes, and two Betsy's, the 36-inch Betsy and the 14-inch Betsy. Another game-changing artist was Martha Armstrong Hand. Now, Martha worked for Mattel during the 60s and into the 70s, I believe. Now, uh, I was fortunate enough to get to know Martha. She was an incredible talent and just a really wonderful person. She at first worked for Viewmaster and did the little clay animation puppets and things, but then she was hired by Mattel and she started doing dolls. Um, she also did her own dolls as a doll artist, and these are porcelain dolls that she did later in her career. And look at those joints. I mean, the BJDs today have nothing on what Martha could do with porcelain by herself back in the 70s or 80s. Let me move this. Martha sculpted for Mattel Baby Pattaburp, and to me, Baby Pattaburp is the first of the modern-looking baby dolls. A new breed of, like Neil Easton brought in a more realistic, more modern look for girl dolls. Pattaburp brought in a new look, the pouty lips, the bigger, more idealized features, brought in a new look for baby dolls. She also did the head for Baby First Step and Drowsy. Mattel used this head over and over and over again for different characters. A very sweet little head. Martha also sculpted Kittles, little Kittles for Mattel. I think she did most of the heads. And then moving forward into the 70s, we have Joyce Christopher, who came on like gangbusters. She sculpted these figures for Kenner. And I think she was a genius in being able to capture a likeness, but keep ideal. They're not scary likenesses. They look like the person, but they also look like dolls. She did. I've never seen anybody be able to balance that like she was able to do. She also did this for World Doll, Marilyn Monroe. Great doll, bad production values. You know, the painting, the clothing manufacturing, but the doll itself, the sculpt is beautiful. Another version of it. She also did Scarlet, and I may be wrong on this. This may have been done by Neil Easton, believe it or not, but one of the two. Again, the sculpts, the likenesses are great. It's just the production was a little off on these dolls. American Character during this time, during the late 50s, early 60s, they were doing these incredible fashion dolls. They were high-end, beautiful dolls, and you have the little 10-inch Tony on the left and the 20-inch Tony on the right. Darcy by Kenner, I'm a little out of sync there. Darcy by Kenner was sculpted by Joyce Christopher, early 70s. Let me see. Another fashion doll that was not so popular, but competed with Miss Revlon and all this was the debutante doll by E.G. This is an all original doll. I don't know who sculpted this, but this was all happening during the 60s too. The trends. Here's the 8-inch grouping by Bernard Lipfert. And during the time, the early 60s, when American Character was still, they did this wonderful little Toodles doll. And again, I don't know who the sculptor is here, but she had a very unique, very pleasing look, as did this doll. I don't know who sculpted these dolls, but there's a grouping of American Character babies that's just beautiful, Toodles. Again, for American character. Again, I don't know who this sculptor is. I haven't been able to find this one out, but I think he did a few things. He or she did a few things for American character time. Whimsy was there. There were many versions of Whimsy, and very popular doll. She didn't last too long though. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm talking fast, but I want to get this done. I want to go through a lot of material very quickly. Um, this is always an interesting slide to me. It's like it's the fashion doll that the mothers in society were okay with are on the left. This is the Little Miss Revlon doll from Ideal. In the middle is the American character Tony doll. And then Barbie came along, and people were freaking out about Barbie's proportions. But, you know, realistically, Barbie's more in proportion to a real human than the other two. The other two have kind of toddler sort of proportions, or young child sort of proportions, and they're supposed to represent you know, a adult female. Um, one of the big changes, not changes, in the early 50s, hard plastic dolls were all the rage. And I think some of the most beautiful little girl dolls were done in the early to mid 50s. And F&B did them, Ideal did them, and American Character did them. And this is, and Madame Alexander. They all the companies did these beautiful, and these hard plastic, this grouping of hard plastic didn't last too long, because as soon as vinyl started coming in, everyone started switching over. Okay, let's talk some more about game changers. Of course, Patsy was a game changer. Here's a wonderful little version of Patsy. Um, an American doll, very sweet and hugely successful for an American doll company. The first Bernard Lipford and the Shirley Temple doll, one of the first celebrity dolls based on an extremely popular little girl. We go back into the, whoops, let me move me. There you have the Dion quintuplets, Jane Withers, you have Dorothy and Deanna Durbin dolls. Dewey's Cochran was another artist. She did some exquisite work for F&B, and these dolls are hard to find in great shape, but just exquisite dolls, and incredible production by F&B. Late 37, 38, 39, around that time period, 100% composition with human hair wigs. These were very fine, expensive dolls. Now, talk about game changers. This kind of snuck onto now as early as early 40s, like 41, 42, they were testing hard plastic for dolls, but they really got into it. This is considered, Sparkle Plenty is considered one of the first hard plastic dolls, mass hard plastic dolls. And I believe she had a vinyl stuffed body. This Ideal doll, this kind of Tony looking doll, was also hard plastic. Hard plastic with washable hair. This was huge too, because they didn't have to use human hair or mohair or string or whatever. They were able to use saran and synthetic fibers for wigs. And Ideal came up with this a technique for a glue that would kind of melt the wig into the plastic on the scalp, so you could wash and set this this hair. Big game changer, Madame Alexander's Cissy from the mid-50s. She had two things that set her apart. First of all, she represented a fashion doll. She had a sculpted bust line, which was hugely controversial at the time, but she also had, which was more unique, was a high heel foot. So finally, little girls could get a doll, little girls and little boys could get a doll that had a sculpted high heel feet, and of course high heels with it. Glamour dolls of the late 50s. This happened very quickly. There was a flood of these, and then Barbie happened. But some wonderful dolls. You have You have, of course, Miss Revlon from Ideal. You have E.G.'s Little Debutante. You have Horseman's Cindy, and then you have a grouping of dolls from American Character. Of course, then Barbie in 1959 really just stopped all that. She came in, and all other fashion dolls were all but over. Now, Barbie inspired these groupings, and it's interesting. Miss 17 kind of like look like Barbie. We talked about the Bernard Litford Tammy. There's Tina Cassini, that's not a pretty doll. It was a great idea, but it's not a pretty doll. Olo Cassini's daughter, supposedly. And then you have Miss Suzette from, what is that? Unita. Very sweet doll. I don't think this doll gets as much attention as she should, and I wish they'd bring her back. That probably won't happen though. And here's Ideal's version of Barbie. First, they started with Mitzi, who was kind of a knockoff of Barbie. I mean, it's pretty similar, similar as far as look goes. I don't think it did well because why should it if you have Barbie? So then they moved on to 16-inch version. They did Jackie and Liz. And this is a Liz doll with her wardrobe. Now, Liz the body was probably sculpted by Neil Easton. This head, I don't know, probably by Bernard Litford, but it's supposed to look like a kind of a Barbie sort of feel, but it was 16 inches tall, so they could not exchange clothes, which was a marketing decision. And then, of course, you have Tammy. American Characters Tressie. Tressie gave Barbie a little bit of a run for her money because Tressie had something, it said hair play, that Barbie had but didn't really have. You couldn't take her ponytail down at the time, but the American Girl style and all that. So Barbie was moving in that direction, but American Character jumped on it, and they really, Tressie was very, very popular for a moment. Now, you probably don't recognize this doll. This was done by Ideal. It's a prototype doll. She's 21 inches tall, and she was done in the early 60ish sort of time frame. Sculpted, I believe, by I think it's a combination. I think that Bernard Litford did her head, and Neil Easton did at least part of her body. The body's a little strange, so I think this was a cobbled together sort of thing. But the doll's very interesting. Now we have. I just want to show you the development, how the modern baby doll. So up here you have Baby Pataburp, which was the Martha Armstrong hand doll I told you about, which developed into other dolls that had a similar look. The button nose and the pouty mouth, not quite as realistic as the tiny tears and those dolls. And then the 60s, 70s dolls who kept this look all the way through. Then you go up to Feza Spanos, who what she did, collectible baby doll, who emphasized and exploded those features. And then through that, it got a little bit, babies got a little bit more realistic. Here's Bitty Baby for American Girl. And then Alexander purchased the Lee Middleton Company, and this is their baby. So you have kind of a more realistic, but more character looking baby doll. Minbuck. Now, why have this here? It's a beautiful doll, a beautiful picture of a beautiful doll, I guess, and it's sculpted by Neil Easton. Another one. Now, in the 70s, early 70s, this doll was a game changer and very unique, and she foretold what was coming. This is Blythe from Kenner, early 70s. She was not popular at all. She was very strange looking. Her eyes, there was a pull string in the back of her head. You could change the color of her eyes and the direction of her eyes, and she was a little big-headed, small-bodied little doll, and she came out of nowhere seemingly. For Kenner. not popular at all until this book. In 2001, Gina Guerin put out this book called This Is Blythe, where she took Blythe and people kind of, Blythe got a second life. I've never seen this happen in the doll world before, where a doll was not popular and then became hugely popular. She was just before her time. And she's being remade, of course, now. And here's versions of what Blythe today, how she's developed: the big head, the small body, the big eyes. Game changer definitely was Gene by Mel Odom. He did Gene for Ashton Drake, 16-inch fashion doll that really paid attention to the fashion and to the storyline, the backstory. It was kind of a brilliant idea from Mel. Bratz, also game changer. Whether you like Bratz or not, the proportion and they really hurt Mattel. They gave Barbie a real run for her money because they were more relevant. They spoke to kids at that time better than Barbie did. The proportions, the funkiness, the clothes, the makeup, all that. So they started to direct the way dolls looked, and this just shows you how Mattel's version did My Scene Barbie that really had a Bratz look. You see her feet; those are on a regular Barbie foot. They're these huge shoes on a tiny little foot. But anyway, I kind of love this doll. I think it was really nicely done. And here's some of this is guesswork, some of it I know for a fact, but let me take you through this. So you have Bratz, and I of course saw Bratz. Saw what was going on there, and at the same time, fashion illustration was changing, and so the Bratz clothes, the funkiness, the change of proportion. I wanted to try my version of that, so I went into Elowen. So I did a more elegant, more grown up sort of version of an exaggerated proportion, not copying Bratz, but using that as an inspiration to go to the next thing. Elowen, because of her storyline, that was the other thing. The storyline was she was quirky, she had chronic ennui, whatever. It was a little darker than the dolls I'd done before. So the storyline was. So that grew into Evangeline Ghastly, and after Evangeline Ghastly, we had Monster High from Mattel. Now, I'm not saying anybody copied anybody, but this is how inspiration worked. And I know for a fact that both Mattel and MGA, both Mattel and MGA, were watching every step we did with these two dolls. I know that for a fact. And then it's interesting what happens here. So you have Monster High, which you got the DC dolls, and then you have Disney, and they're all using this different body, this new proportion, and it's become the standard. Elowen 2006, I felt like was a game changer. I do feel like it was a game changer, but at the same time, what was happening outside was we'd have all our production done in the Far East, so in China and whatever. What started to happen was the Far East, the parents who worked on the dolls I produced had kids, and the kids grew up as artists and consumers and wanted their own dolls. So here's some of the BJDs and the incredible resins that have come out of the Far East and other places. And it's not owned by the American doll companies anymore, the doll world. Anime BJDs, love these. Danny chose Smart Doll. I love these dolls. Had one. These are amazing. Go look at his website if you haven't done it. Fun dolls and very imaginative guy. Okay, now we're going into the future. This is sculptor designer Danny Mac. Now, Danny Mac does a lot of online tutorials about stuff, but look at these faces. These are all dolls. These are all character designs, and they're all dolls. And I've always thought he should do a doll, but I'll have to talk to him about it someday. He's got a great look, and he's got an incredible sensibility about dolls. Now, who are these? These are movie, Matt Damon and movie stars. No, this is the future. This is digital sculpting that's been digitally rendered. These are not real people. These are sculpts. And with what you can do now and with digital printing, I think that this is more like where we're headed. And again, you have digital sculpts. The Star Wars doll is part of that new hyper realism. And that's it. I think I hope I didn't talk too fast for you, and I hope you enjoyed that. My take. I could talk about it for hours. I won't bore you. So I hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of the convention. And please, people, stay safe and healthy out there. Thank you.